Ethan Morgan was a young man born into privilege, the sole heir of Claire and Richard Morgan, a couple whose names were synonymous with success and luxury. Their business empire spanned industries, real estate, technology, and fashion, and their lives were filled with opulence. The Morgans were admired for their wealth and envied for their lavish lifestyle. Ethan, however, was the apple of their eye, and he knew it. His parents adored him, showering him with everything money could buy. Growing up, Ethan attended the best private schools and wore the finest designer clothes. He traveled first class to exotic destinations and mingled with the children of the rich and powerful. His birthdays were extravagant affairs, with no expense spared. From a young age, Ethan had learned one thing: the world revolved around him, and money could solve any problem. Despite their wealth, Claire and Richard tried to instill values in their son. They believed that understanding responsibility and the value of hard work were crucial, but Ethan was stubborn, dismissing their attempts with an air of entitlement. Why should he care about managing money or working hard when he could have everything handed to him? His parents often worried about his lack of drive and respect for others, but they hoped that time would teach him lessons they could not. A tragedy strikes one autumn evening. The unthinkable happened. Claire and Richard were returning from a business gala when their car skidded off a rain-slick road. The crash was fatal, leaving Ethan orphaned overnight. The news shattered his world. He had always seen his parents as invincible, pillars of strength and security. Suddenly they were gone, leaving him alone in their sprawling estate. Ethan inherited everything: vast wealth, multiple businesses, and properties around the globe. Lawyers and advisors swarmed around him, guiding him through the process of claiming his inheritance. For a moment, Ethan felt a strange sense of liberation. With no parents to set rules or lecture him, he believed he could finally live without constraints. At first, Ethan reveled in his newfound freedom. He threw lavish parties, bought more luxury cars, and traveled on whims to the most exclusive destinations. His days were filled with indulgence, and nights were consumed by hedonistic celebrations. He ignored calls and emails from business managers, believing that the empire his parents had built would run itself. After all, wasn't that what employees were for? The beginning of the downfall. But cracks began to show in the foundation of his carefree life. The businesses his parents had meticulously built required attention and strategic decision-making, neither of which Ethan was willing to provide. Profits dwindled as key projects stalled, and employees grew frustrated with his lack of involvement. Ethan's advisors warned him about the dangers of neglect, but he brushed them off. He was too busy living his best life to worry about board meetings or financial reports. Over time, the people around Ethan began to change. Genuine friends who had been close to his family grew distant, weary of his arrogance and reckless spending. In their place came a new crowd, sycophants who encouraged his excesses, not out of loyalty, but out of a desire to benefit from his wealth. They flattered him, partied with him, and subtly encouraged him to spend even more. Ethan's arrogance deepened. He treated his household staff poorly, barking orders and expecting them to cater to his every whim. Employees began quitting in frustration, leaving the estate understaffed and in disarray. Ethan dismissed their departures as trivial. After all, servants were replaceable. The turning point months turned into years, and the consequences of Ethan's negligence became impossible to ignore. The businesses were struggling, with some on the brink of bankruptcy. Properties that had once been lucrative were now financial burdens. Ethan's lavish spending had depleted a significant portion of his inheritance, but he was too blind to see the danger. Then came the breaking point. A massive investment his parents had made in a new real estate project collapsed due to mismanagement. The loss was catastrophic, wiping out a substantial portion of Ethan's remaining wealth. The banks came calling, demanding payments he could no longer afford. One by one, his assets were seized, his cars repossessed, his private jet sold, and even the family mansion foreclosed. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt the sting of reality. He was no longer the untouchable heir of the Morgan fortune. He was a man with no money, no home, and no prospects. The friends who had once surrounded him vanished as quickly as they had appeared. He was left alone, facing the cold, hard truth of his own failures. Hitting rock bottom, with nowhere else to go, Ethan moved into a small, rundown apartment on the outskirts of the city. He had no choice but to find work, something he had never done before. His first job was as a cashier at a local grocery store, a position he found humiliating but necessary. The once proud heir now spent his days ringing up groceries and cleaning aisles, earning barely enough to cover his rent and meals. The job was grueling, and Ethan often felt the sting of judgment from customers who recognized him. But it was also a lesson in humility. For the first time, he saw the struggles of ordinary people. The single mother juggling bills, the elderly man counting coins for his groceries, the tired workers grabbing quick meals after long shifts. Slowly, Ethan began to understand the value of money and the effort it took to earn it. The journey of redemption. Determined to rebuild his life, Ethan enrolled in night classes at a community college, studying business management, a subject he had once scoffed at. He worked tirelessly, balancing his job and studies, and gradually began to excel. The lessons he learned in the classroom were complemented by the hard-earned wisdom of his experiences. Over time, Ethan found a new job at a small startup, where he used his growing knowledge to help the company succeed. He started at the bottom, but his dedication and willingness to learn earned him respect. His colleagues appreciated his work ethic and the humility he brought to the team. Ethan also began mending relationships with people he had wronged. He reached out to former friends and employees, offering sincere apologies for his past behavior. While not everyone forgave him, many appreciated his efforts to make amends. Slowly but surely, he rebuilt a network of genuine connections. A new perspective. Years later, Ethan stood as a changed man. He would never regain the immense wealth his parents had left him, but he no longer sought it. Instead, he found joy in the small victories, helping his company grow, mentoring younger employees, and living within his means. He had discovered a new kind of wealth, one that came from within: self-respect, gratitude, and a deep appreciation for the value of hard work. Ethan often reflected on his journey, recognizing that the tragedy of losing his parents had ultimately been the catalyst for his transformation. While he wished he could have learned these lessons under different circumstances, he was grateful for the person he had become. Moral of the story: true wealth lies not in material possessions, but in the values you cultivate, the relationships you nurture, and the character you build. Life's greatest treasures are earned through effort, humility, and a genuine respect for the journey. Sharing his story, Ethan's journey of transformation didn't just stop at rebuilding his life. Over time, he realized that his experiences could serve as a cautionary tale for others. While he had lost everything, he had gained invaluable lessons about life, responsibility, and the dangers of entitlement. He decided to use his story to inspire others to value what they have, work hard, and understand the responsibilities that come with privilege. At first, Ethan started small. He began volunteering at local community centers, speaking to young people about financial literacy and the importance of humility. He shared his mistakes openly, admitting the arrogance and poor choices that had led to his downfall. His honesty and vulnerability resonated with many, especially teenagers and young adults from affluent families who faced similar struggles with entitlement. Ethan's talks quickly gained popularity. Local schools invited him to speak, and his sessions grew from informal chats to structured workshops. Recognizing the potential to reach a larger audience, Ethan decided to write a book. The Price of Everything: Lessons from a Life of Excess was his personal account of the rise and fall of his privileged life, and how he had found meaning and purpose in starting over. Building a legacy. The book was a surprising success, not because it glorified his wealth or painted a glamorous picture of his former life, but because it was raw, real, and relatable. Ethan didn't hold back in describing his failings, nor did he shy away from discussing the pain of losing his parents and the shame of hitting rock bottom. The book resonated with readers from all walks of life, from struggling young adults to successful professionals looking for deeper meaning in their lives. With the proceeds from the book, Ethan established a nonprofit organization called Wealth with Purpose. The organization aimed to teach financial literacy, responsible wealth management, and life skills to young people, particularly those from privileged backgrounds. He collaborated with financial experts, educators, and psychologists to develop programs that went beyond money management to include lessons on empathy, gratitude, and resilience. Ethan also worked closely with underprivileged communities, understanding that financial struggles weren't limited to the wealthy who squandered their inheritance. He helped design programs that empowered low-income families with financial education, offering tools to save, invest, and build stability. These initiatives not only helped others, but also gave Ethan a profound sense of fulfillment, reconnecting with family and friends. As Ethan's life became more meaningful, he sought to reconnect with distant relatives and old friends. Many of them had distanced themselves during his years of arrogance. But now they saw a different Ethan, humble, sincere, and eager to make amends. Rebuilding these relationships was not easy, but Ethan was patient and persistent. One of the most significant reconciliations was with his maternal aunt, Margaret, who had been estranged from the family for years. Margaret had been close to Ethan's mother, Claire, but their relationship had soured due to disagreements over family finances. Ethan reached out to her, not just to mend fences, but also to learn more about his mother's early life. Through Margaret, Ethan discovered stories about Claire's struggles during her youth, her relentless work ethic, and her determination to build a better future. These stories deepened Ethan's respect for his parents and their legacy. Ethan also reconnected with former employees who had once worked for his family. Many of them had suffered under his mismanagement and disrespect. While some refused to forgive him, others appreciated his efforts to take responsibility for his actions. Ethan made it a point to acknowledge their contributions to his parents' success and thank them for their patience during his tumultuous years. Finding joy in simplicity. Ethan's new life was a far cry from the extravagant existence he had once known, but he found joy in simplicity. He rented a modest apartment, drove a reliable second-hand car, and spent his free time on hobbies that didn't require a fortune: reading, hiking, and volunteering. He discovered the pleasure of cooking his own meals, planting a small garden, and sharing laughs with friends over a home-cooked dinner. His relationships became more genuine, built on mutual respect rather than the superficial allure of wealth. He formed a close circle of friends who valued him for who he was, not for what he could provide. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt a sense of belonging that money could never buy. Reflecting on his journey, years later, as Ethan looked back on his journey, he often visited his parents' graves, bringing flowers and spending quiet moments reflecting on their legacy. He no longer felt bitterness or regret about the life he had lost. Instead, he felt gratitude for the lessons he had learned and the person he had become. Ethan often wondered what his parents would think of him now. He hoped they would be proud, not of his wealth or accomplishments, but of his resilience, his character, and his commitment to making a positive impact on the world. Their untimely death had been the catalyst for his transformation, and while he still grieved their absence, he honored their memory by living a life they would have respected. A ripple effect. Ethan's story didn't just change his life, it inspired countless others. Through his nonprofit, speaking engagements, and writing, he touched the lives of thousands. Parents thanked him for helping their children understand the value of hard work, while young people credited him with inspiring them to take responsibility for their futures. His workshops became a model for similar programs across the country, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond what he had ever imagined.